Hey everybody! I was playing D&D the other day, and I got a ranger. Um, Basically, having folk heroes. What this ranger says background. Anyway, the point was something that I don't quite grasp in D&D is that you're not really in control of your own eyeballs of what you see. That's one thing I was trying to be like a little bit confused about. So any of you people who play D&D, do you know exactly how much you can see and what maybe you can see by just looking around without necessarily the DM telling you what's there? I mean, the dungeon master has to literally tell you every aspect of every detail of every single thing that's there. Then you are, as a player, completely blind, right? Shouldn't there be like without necessarily having to throw dice for perception checks or um, passive wisdom, I guess, or whatever it is. Um, I'm not like I ain't played D&D in a while, but just seems to me like there would be some stuff that you can see as a character without the DM having to tell you that it's there. Um, like maybe natural things like in nature. I'm just trying to think how far. I know the books. I looked it up on the internet the other night. I know they say that if you're outside, you can see up to 2 miles, but then if it's like foggy or raining, it reduces how far you can see. But shouldn't there be like, and of course, you can't see over like hills, mountain obstructions. You can't see over obstructions, of course. So my question for all you D&D people is like, if you're DMs or whatever, how much can I see and what can I see of my surroundings and areas if I'm just looking around without the DM telling me this? Because if the DM has to tell me everything, then the DM has to literally create and build a whole entire world from the very minuscule details. Is there things that I can do as a character that the DM would be like, sure, I don't care? Yeah, like, okay, there's trees in the forest. So if I'm, as a character, say I'm going to climb the tree, that would be fine, right? I mean, I mean, I might have to do a dexterity check or something, right, to make sure that I climb it good. But I mean, just this out of curiosity, what could you see and you see it as your character's eyes that the DM would be like okay with? And at what point can you see it and then interact with it or do it or whatever without the DM telling you yes or no or okay, it's acceptable? I mean, exactly how does that exactly work? I mean, you're telling me I have to literally ask as a character, as a player character. I don't know why the light keeps going in and out, but it does. Oh, never mind. You're telling me that I have to literally, as a character, as a player, ask as player, about everything around my surroundings. I couldn't be like, I don't know, looking at the ground and say, "Oh, I see bugs," which I should see if there happen to be on the ground. Do I have to like go? I'm looking. What do I see? I mean, at what point can I determine what I see on my own as a player to what the DM sees or tells me what I see? Is basically what I'm saying. It just seems that the DM would do. See, just seems like the DM, in my opinion, would be better off to give us our own eyeballs so we could see certain things to a degree, of course, especially when the certain things are natural and or may have nothing to do with the actual campaign, just for fun, type deals while you're in the downtime waiting on, I don't know, something to do something because no offense, there's a lot of boring time and downtime in D&D, in my opinion, and while you're waiting on everybody else to do your thing, or while you're on what's considered rest, um, shouldn't your characters be able to do stuff even though you're on what's considered rest? And wouldn't it should does it really matter what your characters do if it doesn't necessarily involve camping? I mean, even if you're technically on rest, which means you're stopping for the night to sleep and to watch, to watch each night. I mean, I can understand that a lot of DMs may want to skip a lot of that because it gets you straight into the fighting aspect. uh, but I could also see that it would be if you had more people, um, maybe not more people, but if you had a group of people, that it would be more fun to like kind of control your own like adventure, your own like destiny somewhat. And if possible, if you had more people or less people, it depends. If you had a group, wouldn't your companions and your people that you're in a group, wouldn't they wouldn't downtime be something that y'all could do together that would make you be able to build your character more with character development because each players would be talking to each other and learning from each other? I guess if you're having a quick session of D&D, that it would be better to just streamline it to the battle fighting parts. But if you're having like a ongoing campaign, maybe you want to actually role play the downtime. So I don't know, and guess it would be up to the DM's discretion of what you can see without telling him. But that's kind of weird. I mean, how do you have stuff that you know that he doesn't know when he's supposed to be his world and he's supposed to theoretically know everything? I'm just trying to figure that one out. I understand that you have what's considered perception, but there's a thing called natural perception, is what I was getting at. And wouldn't you just naturally be able to see certain things? Be and why would you have to literally ask like everything you see? Because there's some things that you should just see or be able to say, I see that, without necessarily asking the DM, because it's it seems like you're having to give more of the imagination to the DM because he's like the world builder, and you're giving less of the imagination to the actual player character because the player character is not going to. I just think the player character should be able to help the DM build the world by saying that they see things that they would naturally see anyway, and thus the world is built better because the world is not just the DM's world, but it's also the player character's world or the player's world, because they're like, okay, you're in the shop. What would you see in the shop? And the player character is looking around in the shop, and the player character says they see something that would naturally anyway be in the said shop. Or you're out in the woods, and the player character says they see something that would naturally be in the woods. Like the ranger, for example, he's in the woods and he sees a deer. You would naturally see the deer, and the ranger would naturally see the deer anyway, is something I was getting at. Or the magicians or whatever, wizards or whatever, or mages or whatever they're called. They're making potions. Say they're mixing potions in their thing, in their place, and they could naturally see the outcome of different potions being mixed without necessarily having to go DM. What am I looking at? You know what I'm getting at? Or they're various different elements of what you would see without necessarily having to ask the DM, what are we looking at? Because that's just a thought. Uh, so instead of having to ask the DM what you're looking at all the time, could you theoretically tell the DM what you're looking at? I mean, I guess it'd be up to the DM, but it seems like that would be more interesting for you to tell the DM what you're looking at, and then the DM decide what you can do based off of that. So that would be an interesting concept, that the players build the world, and then the DM has to build his system off of what the player sees. It would be kind of a reverse system where the players are building the world based on what they see to a degree, especially naturally anyway, especially natural things that you would see as as a as in real life. Now, that's my first point, and now my second point is that the system of magic in D&D. We have magic in real life. It's called science or unexplained science. A healing potion is basically we take medicine for that. So that's what a healing potion is. A growth potion, that's basically a type of fertilizer that makes things grow, and etc. etc. Okay. My character here can these are pre-drawn characters. I have the ability to do this thing called spike growth here, which range area is 150 feet, and it does 20 feet of area, right, for 10 minutes. Well, the thing is, if we did that from a scientific perspective, the area that affected would be bigger the closer I am to the area from a scientific perspective, which would affect how long the area could grow. So if I casted it like 5 feet away, I should be able to have a bigger cast than 20 feet, or I should be able to adjust the time. See, the magic and Dungeons and Dragons doesn't affect real world scientific uh, scientific thing, because I'm suggesting that magic is just unexplained science or unexplained technology. So if you was running a campaign based on realism or realistic on a realistic setting, um, you would assume that magic is a type of unexplained science. Back then, they didn't know what science was. Okay, you got science, which well, I'm trying to equivalent magic in D&D to science, to modern day science and technology. So, what you can do in those cases is you can create magical things because you know the science behind it, even though you don't know it's called science. So you call it magic. So since real world science would do blah, your magic would have to reflect the real world science of what that would do if we had technology that could do that. Which would include being able to focus targets specifically, and would be able to also include not um, not being able to necessarily control completely your magic. So that's another thing I'm basically that's another real point that I was trying to get across in the group I was with. I'm like, oh, magic should reflect. They want to claim that it's magic, so it's not explained at all. It's just magic. That's what it does. Boom. Now I was trying to be like, shouldn't the magic reflect real world unexplained science or technology? And as such, we would have to base it off of that logic. I mean, I don't get the magic element in D&D because you're just allowed to do stuff, and you don't explain how it's done. You just can do it. Uh, I guess I'm trying to suggest that you would play a D&D game in a real world setting, and that magic would be actually unexplained science, and that um, it wouldn't necessarily be arcane magic or divine magic or any of that other type of magic. It would just be, it wouldn't necessarily be spells that you're casting to do it. It would just be the fact that you know something that most people don't know, and you mix the right chemicals, and which would be potions, together to create this ability or some sort. Now, that being said, I suppose you could have magic, magic, but it would. I'm just trying to figure out how the magic of D&D would work with basically real life scientific applications such as physics, geometry, uh, other various forms of mathematics, um, psychology, um, um, uh, phys- phys- physicology, how people are, anatomy, and so on and so forth. basically, maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm going too deep into this, and trying to bring about like a whole bunch of elements that would take away from basically getting straight to some battle fights. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just over analyzing this fantasy setting and world. Uh, Comment down below what you think, and also, I mean, yeah. Another and another thing that I'm really don't particularly understand about D&D is the idea that you have to pick a god, alignments, all those things. Not sure about that. I mean, why would you have to pick all that? I mean, why does that particularly matter unless it has something to do with the actual campaign? The actual campaign has something in it involved in it, then it shouldn't exactly matter. Uh, really, I mean, it should not really matter. Oh, but maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I don't really get all that part because is it not possible for? I mean, just because you start off as one way, maybe you due to the campaign get your way, you lose your way and you switch your way or you swap your way. I'm just thinking that everybody is naturally going to do what's in their best interests, probably. And yeah. And with that being said, um, everybody would naturally be neutral. They wouldn't be neutral good. They wouldn't be neutral evil. They would just be straight up neutral, for that matter, because of the simple fact that everybody's in it for both their own self interest, which in some cases your self interest is keeping the group together because you're like friends, family, com- compatriots, etc., whatever. So I'm not sure why it matters what gods you worship or what alignment you pick on that particular instance because I mean it would be probably smartest for you all to pick around the same type of alignment because if you do that, um, you won't have in quarrel fighting. But I don't under. But maybe that doesn't matter. I'm thinking that in the long run, for the majority of campaigns, picking alignments and or the gods that you particularly worship doesn't really particularly matter. Not for most particular, not for most player and player characters and interactions. Now, I guess you pick that so that it helps you with your role play. Because if you pick an alignment, you have to now try to make your character act like that. But really, I don't see much of a point for those two particular things, either gods and alignments. I mean, could your character theoretically be agnostic or atheist or worship all the gods in the D&D world as you know uh, be monotheistic or have more than one god that they reverence or whatever. I don't quite grasp all that personally. um I mean, I don't see the necessity of those because realistically, it does not matter. Let's just look at it from ancient day times. Unless you were like doing super amazing, awesome, great feats, like in the Greek and like in the okay, in mythology, only the characters that were doing like super awesome, amazing, great feats would the gods show up and be like, either A, they would be like, let's, help this guy out, or B, they would be like, let's mess with this guy. So, unless, of course, you were involved in like amazing feats, which you probably wouldn't be at the beginning of a campaign, and for the majority, a lot of the stuff you do in D&D wouldn't. Well, I'm talking about gods here. So gods would, I mean, unless gods are localized or something, the average god probably wouldn't give a care what you mortals are doing. I mean, they're gods. So they probably wouldn't care how much you worship them or if you worship them at all or whatever. I mean, I guess it would depend on the god's mentality, but that would require you to make the gods human like with actual attributes. And if that's the case, then they're no longer gods. Now, in the way I understand God. See, God is just a simple, well, he's more complicated than that, but he's like the God of Christianity, for example, is the creator God. He's the sustainer God. He's the universal God. He's the God of gods. There are demons and there are angelic beings. This is true. God created them. Demonic beings are actually probably more likely to be fallen angels. There's the ones that chose to follow Satan, which Lucifer, which God created. So God created these angelic beings to basically keep the universe running smoothly. I will just put it that way. Now, this God doesn't necessarily need the angels to keep the universe running. He just wants companionship because I guess he's alone. That's the only thing I can think of. So he created the angels first, and he created them to be basically obedient servants of his to, I don't know, build the universe with him. Because it seems like they were created before the universe was created. So when God says in the Bible that let there be light, that means that there's light, but now all the stars of the universe just came into being. Now, there are certain passages in the Bible that suggest that the angelic beings are stars, so that would make some sense there, right there. So that would be maybe creating the angelic beings, or finally giving them their light so that they could be the star of that galaxy or whatever. But we're getting into anyway. The point is, God doesn't need anything. He's self-sufficient, self-sustaining, and he created everything just for the heck of it and fun of it. And the only thing I guess he created because he was lonely. I'm not sure, but exactly. But he creates angels, then he created man, or races and alien creatures on different planets. just so they could exist. But other than that, he basically just created the natural laws or science of the universe, and the universe pretty much runs itself. Doesn't necessarily get involved in everyday, ordinary life for the most part. And while, because the Bible says that God, he gives, he reigns on the just and the unjust, meaning that the same natural laws will be here for those who believe and those who do not believe. So, for the most part, God doesn't get too involved in ordinary affairs. Yeah, he has a Bible or a book that he's written to tell people the best way to live their lives and gave examples in it. But to that extent, doesn't do much more than that. I mean, honestly. So if we were to believe gods were like that, um, then the average God probably doesn't care. Even if we were to take the idea that the gods are fallen angels, the average fallen angel probably doesn't care about you, an individual, unless, of course, you do such amazing feats that it makes them look at you, and then maybe goes, that guy could mess up